I mean, I just went to an art fair, and it's just crazy to me because I'm not in the art world in that side of the spectrum. But through the work that's being shown, you get a sense of who's buying it. To me, feels incredibly limited in terms of who's making art and all that. I don't know, but this was an impression of the fairs, where it's just like escapism, hedonistic. That's basically like a class of art buyers that's what they're wanting. It's more a reflection of what's selling.
Welcome to What's My Thesis. I'm Javier Proenza, and today my guest is Pranay Reddy. You're the director of LA Artcore?
Yes.
That's the official title. I that's why there was a question mark. Mm-hmm. I should have asked you before. How long have you been there?
So I came actually to LA in 2006. And so that's kind of when I started there. And so,
wow.
Yeah. And it was kind of a fluke actually, because I was like kind of winded and just kind of wary from the working in galleries in New York. It's where I was before.
Okay.
And so I was just thinking like, what's a sustainable path? I was at an art school. And so I was just like, what's a sort of, what can I be doing that feels more productive? And so the community arts just started to kind of come into my brain around that time.
Define community arts, because I think I have a feeling of what you're talking about.
Great question. Yeah. Community arts is, I think, kind of arts and creative processes that that involve like other people having creative processes, and I guess they're commercial like factors like not being primary, being secondary, maybe just like.
What do you mean? Sorry. So it's if I can paraphrase to make sure I'm understanding, you're saying that like it's a practice of helping others, like facilitating other people's practices.
Yeah, like I think exactly. Like I feel like in just the commercial realm, it's just an arm of the system, which is just so individuated and so isolating, and actually, and it just like privileges this individuality. So I was just thinking how extreme that is.
Yeah.
And just not even extreme, just like it was not working for me. And so
after being in the commercial space for years in New York,
just for 2.5 years, it just took that long to,
it's New York.
To feel like, wow, people are using my body and other people's bodies, to just make millions. And,
oh man. And like, I feel bad asking, but now I want to know where you worked.
It's so funny because are
you comfortable with discussing that?
I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, well,
you're on good terms with them and everything.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm just thinking about it is because like when this is points to also why I left was because like I signed an NDA at one. So this is probably a thing that like happens a lot.
Oh, okay.
I can imagine it's like exponentially increased since the early 2000s. So you're always signing an NDA of some sort, but but
you can disclose where you work and that you left because you were tired, right? That's all you've said so far.
Correct.
That's not NDA breaching.
Yeah, I guess I couldn't. It's like this. It's like you can have the juice without like the space, or you can have the space without the juice.
So wait, then don't tell me the space and give me the juice, I guess.
It's kind of I mean, it's probably what so many people, I think, feel in all bigger commercial blue chip spaces. I mean, it's like if you're not, I think there's just like an amount of toxicity that is class oriented. And it's just because they're literally, the whole system is unsustainable and they're not thinking about that. And it's just like, I think when I really think about it, it's part of the like a colonial project in a sense.
Well, this is not a well-formed conspiracy theory yet, but I was talking to my friend Alex Andrew Sanchez, who's been on the show, and he seemed to think it wasn't that crazy. But I just feel like the role that artists have been relegated to, you know, like I still haven't read the book Finks. I forget who the author is, but it's basically all the relationship that the CIA had with the art movement in the early, you know, like I think even Susan Sontag was associated with them. Definitely the feminist movement, but I feel like there's something about the way art is taught, something about the separation between the business side and the like actual expression of art. I feel like a lot of artists just end up being corralled into the space where there is no support system, like what you're saying, which like historically, like if you look at like the Renaissance, artists were part of the machine, you know, like even though they were rebellious, they were still part of the church art machine and all of that. Whereas like now they were just kind of nothing, you know. And it seems like you know, I think back on like people like the Berlin Dada, like that seemed like the stakes were high, you know, like there was like I don't know if I would call them specifically anti-fascist, because that's related to like fascism, right? Like I think their art was kind of transcends the fact that they're talking about Hitler and whatnot. But I don't know. That's my conspiracy theory. I think that the artist role has been neutered, not to use a too graphic.
So interesting. Yeah, I mean,
I know you can call me crazy. It's okay.
No,
it's just a point of conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's all valid to me, because just the premise of the CIA getting involved in art, to take over, in a sense, culture. It's like,
well, yeah. I mean, I think.
I mean, no, I understand, and I know that.
Yeah.
But that was the aim, right? Like it was to take over a world, to take over as a world.
Yeah, to sort of like say, like, look at how free we are over here, you know.
Right. And I think
I think that like on a side thing, I think feminism is weaponized internationally in terms of like, you know, when you have people asking, not that I'm a huge Ilhan Omar fan, but like asking her about female genital mutilation, you know, that's like a Western feminist ideal that kind of is like also a bit xenophobic and isolating, and it erases a little bit of the history of why Islamism is, I don't know, did we go in too deep?
I just don't know where, like, yeah, no, I'm just listening, hearing you.
But yeah, no, so like, I just think that like, I don't know, I try to think of the U.S. in our internationalist state, and guess I'm going here because I think a lot of that space that we're talking about, I guess the thesis that I'm hitting at is sort of the idea that like, is it possible to have a revolutionary art when the market is running it? You know, I had Christopher Reyes talk a little bit about that, and like you can't, like the people with money are not going to buy revolutionary things that kind of make them feel like shit about their, you know, position in the world and the oppression that they provide and whatnot.
Right. Man, I have so much on
go
my brain
for it.
about it. Just about so many aspects of that.
I go so that you, like, you know, this is your interview, but you know, I think that we're in an interesting space about because I literally just interviewed Tyler Park, who does the commercial side. I have nothing against it. I'm just more thinking about what the role of the artist is in contemporary society.
Yeah, it's just
content makers.
Totally. I mean, I feel like the boundaries need to be fluid necessarily. But I also think that that's it. I think there has to be a shift in what we prioritize as a sustainable path forward.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's let me just go back to like the CIA really is just that's like a nation building project, you know. And I think every kind of recent capitalist country that embraces capitalism, you know, also culture explodes as a result too, you know. And I think the way it is sort of, it's almost deployed. It's not really just like accessible, or it's not. There's not a way in which we kind of discover that, or there is a way. I don't know.
I mean, it used to be the church doing that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That like, do you play Civ 6?
What's that?
It's a world domination game. It's like the hexagonal overview kind of game. But basically one of the two main things are science and culture. Those are the two main driving forces that project you forward into the higher eras. So it's like it's literally weaponized in a video game I play.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what all regimes and agendas.
Yeah,
they always have an artistic, or like, what does the culture look like? Like for right now, they're saying that we're all looking at the NEA application. It's all about how patriotic it changed. It recently changed to like, how patriotic are you?
Yeah. What do you mean by NEA?
National Endowment of the Arts.
Oh, okay.
For all like nonprofit institutions, like the criteria is usually about like, what are we doing in our communities? What's the impact? All of that. Yeah. And now it changed. The guidelines got revised just a couple weeks ago, and it said that it was about they're honoring projects that show how patriotic and like, what is our heritage or something. It was like something to do with like. That's interesting because
I today I just posted about how it's funny to see how many, because some would see that as a right wing shift, but I'm hearing a lot of liberals talk about how patriotic they are and how they're going to fight for their country in California, and to me it's an interesting shift because it's like, I don't know. What is it? Are they only going to just hire white artists? Do you think? Or do you think it's a move that it's going to be more about fighting for democracy kind of thing?
That's such a great, I mean, to me, it's like, I'm looking at it like, I mean, I'm not thinking that it's reliable in any sort of way. Yeah. I feel like if you don't have, I mean, with the current, I was just hearing somebody say, it was just on a show or something, that I think it was the Senate, like a Chicago or like an Illinois senator, who just like recently said that like the Nazi party took over in like over a month or a week or something. Just really quick, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it's like, these are really at a federal level, like, to me, it's all very unstable. Like, how can we expect, if we apply, even if we get the funds, that the money would even be there? Given what is going on, right? But
Trump likes art. He has a golden toilet, doesn't he?
He has his aesthetics. I don't know if he likes art per se.
And I mean, well, let's take a step back, because I think I took it a little too intense. But just the idea of that CIA element, and just like, I don't know if there's ever been really a time in history where artists, maybe the Dada, were like kind of subversive. Like, who makes subversive art? I don't know. Like, how does it get promoted? How, like movies maybe sometimes?
I think that, it's like all the great art, it just it almost embeds the politics and the like, in its images, in its like forms, so that we recognize that like 100 years later or 50 years later, or like, that's, I mean, I think what the great art does for me is just that it's like, it kind of is always like, it's like a living thing. And so
well, let's take a step back and go into your origins and do the more formulaic way of doing the show, just to get a better insight on your perspective. And then maybe talk a little bit about but I now that we've opened the floor, I'm happy to entertain anything that relates back to what we've already kind of cut into. But okay, so New York, did you grow up there? Where are you from originally?
No, I actually grew up in Littleton, Colorado. It's a suburb of Denver. It's like on kind of the front range of the Rockies.
Oh, really?
So yeah, and parents came to the States from India in 1978.
Okay.
So, and then, but yeah, Dad studied in Illinois.
Mm.
Then his brother was down in Oklahoma. So then, like, I was born in Oklahoma City.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that's like really my real roots. And I just like was, looking at my birth certificate and like just trying to get so now I kind of like, I was like, shouldn't I know what time I was born? And like all those like really like those matters start to matter. But yeah. So then, I think my mom was like, we can't stay in Oklahoma. Like, let's go up to Denver.
Yeah.
It's got to be, she was much more like landscape oriented, much more like aesthetics, beauty, nature. Like,
and Oklahoma's mostly just windy, right? And
it's like yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
There's like street racers that I'm a fan of. Yeah. It's that flat. Out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's this TV show called what is it called? I forget what it's called, but it's basically these guys drag racers racing on the streets to be in the top 10 list. So that's my view of the culture.
What top 10 list?
Like who's the fastest?
Okay, they're like,
so there's a list and there's specific rules, and they made a whole TV show out of it.
Oh,
and it was like they're huge celebrities now. From Oklahoma.
That's kind of like, that's kind of cool because they're doing it themselves.
Yeah. No, and one of my favorite things is like, why is it so windy in Oklahoma? Because Texas sucks. And just dumb shit that's the culture I've been able to take in.
Wow. I think that's the at some point, I think it's like somewhere in that bucket list of like, I need to go spend time where I was like born.
But you don't have any recollection of it?
So
did you ever visit?
Yeah, we visited because like we had relatives that stayed there. And then they ended up like, there's some of them are still there. So I feel there's definitely roots there.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. All right, so then you're in Colorado. When do you start going to art school and all of that? And then when did you stop? Yeah. Or, I mean, you still make stuff, so we can maybe talk a little bit about your secret practice, which I don't have a problem with it being secret. But, let's take the journey into how you get into running a not-for-profit.
Yeah, so I think what is probably... relevant is just getting into like punk music. That's probably but that's like at age 13. I'm like,
what year?
1993.
Oh, we're the same age. You look much younger.
Oh, it's all that yoga. No, kidding.
Now I'm trying to like look at your crow's feet, and I'm like, yeah, they're not that bad.
I feel like
93 was a good year. 94 was a great year for mainstream music too. That was the year a bunch of shit came out.
Yeah, I mean, holy crap. I mean, we didn't know what we had back then. We kind of did though, because I think that grunge was like in full effect.
Yeah.
And
91
13,
was 90 or 91 was Nevermind, and I think that's pretty much when that shit happened.
Yeah, like 5th grade, I was my at least through even osmosis of my brother and just what's going on. You're getting all of that even young, and so Smashing Pumpkins was like this. I was always I always needed like a music.
I'm glad you brought him up, because I didn't want to be the one to bring him up, but yeah, that's the album that I was thinking about.
Oh yeah, I mean, it just like and Pearl Jam 10 actually was in 5th grade. My friend Timmy had a metal. His dad was a total into metal and rock and all that. So Timmy let me borrow that tape, and that probably, then my mom was really into it too.
Really?
Yeah. And so then that I was just into it. I would just listen to it over and over. And then that kind of just alternative culture, I feel like, was just
Were you into zines and stuff? Like,
Yeah.
so that like Xerox aesthetic era of like DIY kind of stuff, did that speak to you, or were you separate from that?
Yeah, like, so I discovered this no effect. We were, there was about 200 Indian families like in Colorado at the time. So we were all really tight, we'd go to each other's house. That was like our weekend thing, is getting together. The Gen X generation, they, some of them were older, I was kind of younger, just, I'm like, we're barely millennials. Right. But she had this downstairs. I just discovered NoFX and Sonic Youth. I mean, when that night, I'll never forget it, because it just like set me in motion, a certain thing. And once that happened, I was like propelled in a sense. And so, just that kind of, then I started sharing it with my friends in 7th grade, 8th grade. Then we started skating. It just coalesced with skating, zine making.
Were you taking pictures of your friends with the like photography? Did that play in? Because that's a common origin story. We
did have, like, we had a friend of ours who did like all of the video. So he was like, I was in the art and English literature like area of the like school. Down the hall was the photography lab. Brad was there. A couple of others were there. Gwen was there. And then we had Brad. Yeah, Brad was like way up the hall too, further in the like TV video production. He was working on, so I think we had the bases covered in terms of like how to operate.
So then when did you decide to go to school for it? And where did you study? Did you study in New York?
I went to the Maryland Institute College of Art as undergrad.
MICA.
Yeah, in Baltimore.
Were you a painter?
No, I did like a general fine art.
Did you work with Barry Nemeth?
I knew who he was,
okay. but that dude was a visiting teacher at a school I went to, and he clicked something for me.
That's cool.
Yeah.
He had a real classical, he
was a
background.
plein air, plein air as fuck. And I was in Florence, so it was like perfect timing. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Italy is still one place I really want to go to.
Oh man,
just like that. Yeah, I think I'm ready for that one. I wasn't like I wasn't into, like, I'm not like a painter's painter, right? Like I was sort of by way of like interdisciplinary sculpture, language of sculpture. And then whatever happens is more through the language of sculpture. So, but I was, just kind of,
so wait, does that mean you have a secret practice that's sculpture?
Yeah, a little bit.
And your storage. That's what I love about 3D art is that it takes up space. So,
well, I feel like the sort of like the workaround of sculpture is photography.
Oh, okay. So you document and then.
So and then, what I started doing was sort of doing these little like almost like vitrines from like herb boxes.
Okay.
And so then last year was just like a tough year, right? So I was kind of a little bit, like kind of stuck in LA, and I was really trying to get over this funding gap hump. So there was a lot going on, right? And so I think what I did was I kind of responded with like ritual, by ritualizing everything. And so then I started just taking the like remnants of activities that of things that I did, like tracking in little like, little like these like spiky spherical ball things, and mixing them with like a pen I just expended on journaling or something like that. But then I just started the marking time that way.
Okay.
And then I just started writing down like how I remember like summer. And so I just really started kind of expanding on the physical objects. And then also, but then I've been kind of taking pictures just in a way that feels more like I have a trove and I just am waiting to kind of figure out what happens with that.
Yeah.
But I just keep kind of accumulating.
Cool. Well, yeah, you kind of downplayed it when I invited you on the show. You were like, all I do is this, but I didn't realize you still had a practice. So tell me a little bit more about the LA Artcore and what that space is like, and then how it applies back to that. You were saying something about the primary A and the primary B, and that was in relation to I forget what it was called, the kind of practice that you were saying. You said something and I asked you to identify it, and then I paraphrased it. This makes great podcasting. This format of question, but the idea that the practice of facilitating another practice. What is that called again?
Oh, like community arts?
Yeah, community arts.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I've been really inspired by like social practice and just the artists that were working within social practice. And so I almost really feel close to that in terms of like directing a nonprofit, and that's just thinking about what that is, and what the point is of a nonprofit and what the opportunities are, which are to kind of build like community knowledge, build shared knowledge, share resources, actual resources, share and be between the art world and like the community, and bridge that, so that it is that the voices on the ground are seen, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, which is just like the opposite of like I just went to an art fair.
Did you this
Frieze? Weekend?
You went to Frieze?
I went to Felix, but I saw Frieze online and just...
Is that at a hotel, Felix?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's just crazy to me because I'm not in the art world in that side of the spectrum, but it's just so crazy to like see what that is and see through the work that's being shown, you get a sense of who's buying it, number one, and number two, like, I guess which artists are being sort of put forward. It almost like, to me, feels very incredibly limited in terms of what's really, what really makes up the arts and what makes up who's making art and all that. So, this, I don't know, but this was my, an impression of the fairs was just like escapism. Like we'd rather not deal. Like,
yeah. That makes sense.
Like hedonistic. And it's not all that, but it's like, if that's what art is, being like, that's basically like a class of art buyers that's what they're wanting. It's more a reflection of what's selling, right?
Yeah.
So I found that to be, not that I'm like, we all have the need for escapism and all that, but I just found that to be like,
I think that is one of the harsh realities of being an artist that you kind of have to come to terms with, which is why spaces like LA Artcore or Artcore LA.
LA Artcore.
Artcore. I'm dyslexic. I get it. But LA Artcore is like, I think I went and I saw there was like a fundraiser show or something. You had Dakota Newt in there. You had Zainab Altaji, like a lot of good people in the community. And what's it called? That's where I saw that's where I found out about Zaina's leg injury. Like she had a piece where she had the leg. You had also Lauren Miriam Marabi, who had was like stitching like playing cards together. So that was like, that was a cool show to go to, because it was just like a lot of people that I know are out here working and doing stuff, but not necessarily actively in a commercial, like, don't necessarily have representation. What is the, like, do you guys have a mission in particular?
Yeah. So it's really that artists are the conduits of the communities that they live and work in.
Okay.
So through that lens. And we'd really worked on that mission statement in the pandemic when I took over as director. And so that's like another story as to like how that all happened. But
you were working there in another capacity and then got promoted, or did you just get
correct.
hired? Okay.
It was well, yeah, and there was like I could tell that story, but this is basically that our mission, we kind of reevaluated what it does essentially, and we just really wanted to like reactivate it. It'd been run like the same way since around like 1989 or 9. It just had like
different
I feel
priorities.
Like, I guess just that the whole landscape has shifted so much in terms of what you can do as a nonprofit, and it's like generationally, like I think generations above us, like 1 or 2 generations above us, like are still in that mentality of, or they've been conditioned by post-war mentality of like specialize in a thing, and then you only operate in that thing. You don't have any other knowledge outside of that profession. And so, man, I like think that just that generation took that so to heart that they almost like did not connect between things, like, or, between neighbors, between like, well, they're more conditioned, like they could retire and the company will take care of them and they just need one job and like all that. And so there was no need, in a sense, to no thinking of like, oh, we need to like partner with like folks like in our community, and like organizations that are being formed to like create a support system.
Well, you guys, now that you're talking about neighbors, there's like, you guys are in Little Tokyo, right across from where J-Town Action Solidarity does a lot of their charity, or their not charity work. What is it? There's a term for it, mutual aid work.
Yeah.
Which is pretty intense. You're like next to the Geffen, but like facing like the harsh realities of the capitalist system too, right?
Yeah, it's just and it's
and for people who don't know, like like basically like there's been kind of a war going on to try to there's like a public area right in front of you guys, right? That is very well suited to accommodate people that are in a difficult situation. And it's and then there's a community organization that goes there. I followed them along. Anna Iwataki, who's been on the show, was the person who was working with them. I don't know if she's still with us, but brought my attention to that project. But it's like, it's really crazy that like you're right there and you're watching this, especially during COVID and all. Like this is some brutal stuff. They do the We the Unhoused goes out there, the podcaster, and they do like power-ups where people charge their phones and stuff. Like it's really like basic necessities for people to function.
I mean, it's pretty awesome what they do. I mean, it's just, it's like nobody else is doing it, like, in quite the way they are, which is direct. Yeah. It's really direct. And like, it makes an impact because it's right on the corner. It's almost like,
it must make you feel better about the world to see people put it, to see people. I mean, it probably also sucks because you're seeing people in a very vulnerable position, but you're seeing someone try something,
Yeah. I mean, it kind of I think it gets us. Number one, it creates awareness of like the realities, the day-to-day material realities of what's going on. And I think too, it's that, during the pandemic, I mean, we had a houseless community. I mean, it just grew out into this Toriumi Plaza is what it's called. And so it was pretty self-sustaining. It was, I was going to the space, I lived in downtown at the time, but I was going to Artcore and just spending like late nights there, just working, doing different things. And I never had a sense of like instability about that, or community, like there's, any issues. Right. And I think it's just that ever since I think I lived in LA too, it's just that the city, it's just really something that the city, it has a long way to go in terms of like, how it really understands humanity. And
No.
I think that really, it's just right now is just a real reflection of like inequality, of like extreme, not only inequality, but like cruelty, you know. And I think it's like, how can we let people like survive? I mean, we need to take care of each other. And I think people just there's only a few people that are sort of, I don't know, they're all the moneyed interests that are just flooding City Hall, and this like that have like, there's just a huge lobby for like huge police funds. Just like, it's like out of control. Like if you could even shave off like 10% of those police like funding for police, like, I mean, I just don't understand why there's like this repetition to me. And that's where I think I just get like, it kind of takes my breath away in some ways. It's just like, I don't get why administration after administration can't stand up to these like forces. And like, yeah, I mean, we're a powerful, like, you know, state and city. We have the ability, their capability, but
yeah, I always feel bad because like when I was living in Florida, like we kind of looked at California of like as like this place that was like good and like, you know, and then man, the disillusion of moving here and being like, oh, you know, like Miami wasn't that bad. Like as far as like it's corrupt as fuck too, but like look at something like Art Basel, you know, like that shit. Yeah, it's a hustle to bring a lot of tourism and all of that, but like it knows how to do what it does. That city, you know, and you don't see anywhere near, like the numbers are just not even close, right? But this city's like, I don't know, probably like 5 times bigger. So it's easier to manage something like that. But like I don't know, I think also just the price of housing is just so insane. But yeah, it's crazy. This is like a wild. It still feels like the Wild West to me, you know.
Yeah.
Where it's like it's just more people.
There's definitely, yeah. I mean, when I first came, there was just definitely like the way cops move here was just so shocking to me because it was almost like, I'm like, oh my God, this like good old boys culture here.
Yeah. No, for sure, dude.
And it's like a South.
I mean,
me coming from Baltimore and New York, it just really stuck out. I was like, it's not like, I'm not saying that like, you know, the PD also has different problems in the East Coast, but like, I was like, man, this feels like I'm like going back in time.
It's pretty aggro. But my favorite joke from Rush Hour was when Chris Tucker would say that my mama tells. I'm sorry, I should not do a Chris Tucker impression. He is a very specific person, though. I was trying to do the high pitch as well, but yeah, his like my mama lies to people about me being in the LAPD. She tells them I'm a drug dealer or something like that was the bit because it's like so embarrassing. And this movie came out in the time of like whatchamacallit. You know, there's the list of like horrible things probably around the time a little bit after OJ, but like I'm trying to remember when were the LA riots? Those were in the
like
early
92?
92, yeah. So that's too
92.
early. Anyway, there's a lot of historic bad shit happening in this city. When you start to try to pinpoint when something happened, it gets hard to do it. But so tell me a little bit more about like your place in the art world and like how you interact with people. Do you have like a community of artists that you're like close with or?
Yeah, I'd say that, you know, it's funny because I was telling somebody yesterday that I'd come to LA in 2006, and then the kind of founder and director of the gallery of Artcore had been essentially doing it since 1980.
So just one person? Wow, yeah.
And so it was like, and I mean, she was pretty, she's a force of nature, and she was like very fierce about the way she ran it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And essentially what that had the effect of like sort of being cryogenically frozen in time.
Yeah.
It was very much like old school, go in, clock in, just do time. You're not really doing much while you're there, but you're sort of wasting away.
Yeah.
And there wasn't, in the sense that there wasn't really like, it sort of like, there was no real like openness to like, what can we do? What do we have resources for? It was sort of like, we do it this way and that's the only way. And so
streamlined is how they would probably think of it.
There, yeah, probably. Yeah. And in on those terms, it was like, for sure. And so by the time, it was sort of a thing where she didn't want a succession plan. She didn't want, like, she wanted it to be over when she passed.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And so, we'd actually grown pretty close, like, after she gave me, like, she'd sensed that I was just like I was just like so exhausted by like 2017 that I just was like, I don't know what else to do but to just like, I'll walk the earth. Like, that's cool. And like, and so then she'd kind of picked up on it, and then sort of almost instantly, like, right in the week that I was literally like, I was like, I'll just apply to like a Starbucks, and like, this is like in 2017, and I was just like, it doesn't matter, like, I anywhere, like, I just need to like like anything. And so within that week, she'd like, I think she had something going. I mean, she just had this other sense, and so she'd kind of told, one day I came in and she's like, all right, like, you're going to be at the brewery now. We had this other space at the Brewery Arts Colony, and we'll just install together once a month. And that was it. And so then it started to open up. That was like when it started to open up for me. And then that was when we also had like a really good
stir crazy.
I think
she just wanted to, she didn't want to lose you, kind of thing.
I think so. I think she also cared about me in some strange, twisted way. And like, it kind of, then it was sort of expressed.
Yeah.
But up until then, it was like a lockdown, and it was like, I really didn't, I felt
picturing The Lighthouse, the movie.
I haven't seen that.
It's about I'm making a joke. It's about one guy torturing another guy at a job, but then they kind of care about each other. Anyway, it kind of messed with my head. It definitely did, and it wasn't sort of a thing that anyone really does. And I think that I didn't know how, like, to get beyond it. I think it was just, I'd moved to LA, like, I just kind of also just felt like I need to really like see this through and see like life out here through in a sense. And so but there was no oxygen in that, and so it was draining. It was just like, I was like kind of going backward, retreating in a sense. And so and then during those like 2017 to up until just before the pandemic was when we were like, I'd got to know her, and as a person, just like, we at least had a more peer-based respectful relationship. I think that sort of honored each other's, like, what each other was doing. So then she passed in April 2019. Oh, wow. Just 92 years old. Oh my goodness. I didn't realize she was
exactly. Like, actually, it's really kind of a phenomenal like thing.
That's amazing. It doesn't sound like she had dementia with it, which is great.
Not really. No, she was pretty sharp. She drove from La Cañada down to downtown every day, like 5 days.
That seems irresponsible to me because she's 92, but I'm joking.
I mean, it was just, she's a force of nature. Like, you were like, how are you? When I thought she was like in her 50s when I met her, and she was already in her 70s. So she just was like,
wow.
Yeah, she just was like a force of nature.
But it makes more sense about being set in your ways, and her age recontextualizes the entire. Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, it reminds me of Driving Miss Daisy, even though I haven't seen that movie since it came out, and I was probably too young to really absorb any of it. But, the tough woman that sort of warms up to the guy, right? That's kind of the basis of that movie?
I haven't seen the movie, but that description, yeah, that sort of fits the bill for sure.
Yeah.
Like Lydia, she was a professor of art at Cal State LA.
Oh, okay.
So from like in the 60s and 70s, and then she retired in the late 70s, in which Artcore, her mentoring of the students, I mean, she'd really done some pioneer. She was kind of a pioneer. I mean, she had a great eye and all that. And so she formed Artcore with them in like 1980. And then I can't remember what I was going to say, but
it happens on this show all the time.
Yeah.
The relationship, driving Miss Daisy.
Yeah. So correct. Thank you. So she'd had this heyday. She'd moved, like everyone was moving to like downtown and Arts District. That's kind of where there was just like in the 80s, there was just like it was like a Soho or something. It was just a scene. It was DIY galleries, like just everything you could imagine under the sun going on in the arts in downtown. So then like that was her heyday, you know, and she was just really, I mean, it kind of gave her life. I mean, she was just living. And then in the 90s, like a lot of those artists like decamped, and in the 80s, but just the artists that lived there and worked there. And like, you know, I mean, it was like any of us, you know, we go to like in our 20s, we're living in warehouses, starting our own scenes. We're just part of a scene. And then all of a sudden life kind of takes over, you know, you get older, you change, you go, okay, maybe, you know, we're ready to like get some greener pastures, like move out. So that kind of happened for so many of the art of the generation that she kind of came up with.
Yeah.
And then by the late 90s, it was like almost just empty. And so then by 2006, it was like, I came and I saw her and she was like, just, I mean, had like a decade of stewing about that. she was like really upset.
The thing that hurts about listening to her story is that like we're all gonna be that.
Yeah. Well, it's like that.
We're all gonna be disillusioned and like bitter, and it used to be so good.
Oh, totally. I mean, especially those of us who grew up pre-internet.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the hardest on those who kind of came up with analog, because we kind of knew of a slower time.
Yeah.
That just, was simple. You could go, I mean, we kind of more associated with strangers that were in the same space. And it seemed, I mean,
well, we're all propagandists now, and that responsibility is a burdensome one. You know, like everybody's their own like PR agent, and some people are really good at it and then become superstars, and other people like me just have middling successful podcasts. You know, but like in general, like especially in our space, like all artists it's all about like how you present yourself and your aesthetic. And sometimes people get mad about the show. I mean, not often, but like sometimes people are like, they're not happy with how they represented themselves essentially. And then they're like, oh, they're precious about that branding, you know, and that perception.
Yeah. I mean, that's a thing that, I don't know. I'm glad that as we get older that, I mean, I'm just glad that I don't really,
you're not engaged in that.
Yeah. It's like,
I'm trying to remember what you post about.
You know, cause it's like, I really like a tight, like artistic positioning. Don't get me wrong. Like I really love like really like thoughtfully considered artwork that just is tight, you know, it's tightly executed, and you go, oh, that's like really amazing, because that took so much mental effort and technical effort and emotional effort. But yeah, I think that we also, if we like building up a brand, to me is my attitude toward it is like almost like a work of art, like it embeds that I suppose, in it where it frees you up to just be a person.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I don't know. We also came from like, we were kind of, our forebears are Gen X, and so I kind of think I took to heart the sort of, I guess,
anti-commercial apathy.
Yeah, kind of like, I mean, I always thought, like, when I was in high school, I was like, man, like, I would love to just like, I thought like I'll own a coffee shop and a record store with a coffee shop attached to it.
Were you born? What year were you born?
81.
Okay, so you are a millennial.
Yeah.
I'm not.
What do you mean?
I'm 80.
Oh, you're 80. Okay,
Yeah.
you're like cusp.
Yeah. I'm like, no, I mean, we're practically the same age.
Yeah, but it's crazy because the class above me,
we probably would have been in the same grade though.
Yeah.
But no, you know what? No, because I was in the same grade with 79s.
Mm-hmm.
So
I wasn't. Yeah.
So we probably would. But that's such an interesting distinction because I keep hearing you say that like we're millennials, and I was like, wait a second, there's a discrepancy here that I need to.
If you really want to, I mean, and I think that's also like a and that, like, I think it's almost like you're in the territory of like, what do I feel?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they tried to do exennials for a while because it was like, oh, technology increased so much.
I can see that.
Yeah, but
there
then
is a transition.
But then I was like, they discovered the atom during my parents' generation. That was a pretty big, like they invented plastic, all these things that like are now, it's hard to even imagine living without them.
Right. I will say that when I went to art school, the class above me was so much different in mentality than my own class. Like they were the ones that really kind of are brought up in the direct conditioning of the boomers who like are like, and most of them have that like work ethic discipline that like they're like thinking about retirement, family, a house, like they're in that kind of order of like what is a conventional so I feel like a lot of Gen X like kind of live like that, not even a judgment, just like, and
well,
just
now
like
that I think of it,
there's a lot I admire about that as well.
Now that I think about it, well, no, that's a broad statement, but like most of the people that I know that have houses are definitely Gen X.
Yeah. I don't know any millennials who have a house.
Yeah. So, or at least at my age, I don't know too many millennials younger than me that are like, I'm buying a house, dog.
Right.
Although actually, I just remembered Saskia Bailey, just who I've had on the show before. She's an art advisor. I think was telling me she just got a house.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, hey, if you can have a house, like, it's a lovely thing. That's, I wish everybody had a house. Like,
I know.
We all deserve a house. Exactly.
That'd be amazing.
I mean, I'm a socialist. So like,
no, I definitely get those vibes.
Kind of like, I'm all about just that, like just spreading the resources.
What were some of the things directly in that 2-year period of working in that space that really, like, what are some things that are, because I just had Tyler Park on. He runs a space, and when I'm talking to him, it's good to hear his perspective, right? I do think that artists tend to be a little bit resentful and jaded, mainly because they don't understand market forces, and they don't understand. They see galleries as gatekeepers. They don't realize that they're people that have to pay the bills, and that they have to build a collector base, and whereas like, but at the same time, there's valid criticisms of that world and how it's structured. And as somebody that's not that both can be true, right? Like they can be human and people just doing something noble. But then there can also be something wrong with the general way that whole art world functions. To maybe go back to a little bit what we were talking about, like the place of the artist, because that's very confusing. But it seems like your work with LA Artcore is more akin to that. Definitely, I don't want to minimize by giving you a compliment. I don't want to minimize the work that the mutual aid work that the J-Town Action Solidarity does, because I don't think it's on the same plane, right? Like these are people that are humanizing the least human in our society. But I think that, these efforts that are not for profit and things like that, like those are avenues for people that don't necessarily want to chase the almighty dollar, but still want to have an art practice, have opportunities to have some relevancy without necessarily depending on exclusively on the artist run scene, what I was telling my friend recently, something that is pretty self-explanatory. It's not revolutionary, but to keep in mind, there can be artist run commercial spaces and there can be artist run not-for-profits, but can there be commercial non-for-profits? Those are oxymoronic, or can you get a 501c and be commercial?
I think that's definitely structural, I want to say, because like if you look at like the bigger institutions or how like some institutions move, like MoMA, let's say MoMA, they're like a corporate nonprofit. They're it's just there's how is that? It's like,
so it'd be like museums that are massive institutions would be, because they have gift shops and whatnot,
Yeah, I think it's like trend. I guess as far as like the technical of like just structuring, like let's say art sales. We don't transact like art sales. but we let the artists transact art sales, and we can kind of direct them. And then what we do is we just say like, if you want to make, we have a recommended 35% cut, but that's like recommended. If you're like in a tough spot, it's available. So, and it's as a donation. I think that can be a model for how, because I don't think that like if it's like an artist space, then you're going to rely on sales. I think that where you get into that murkiness is like where a nonprofit may start to like rely on sales so much that, that then you start showing artists just to make sales, right?
Would you lose your 501c?
I think you will lose. So I think if you are selling any merchandise, I think it's, and I have to double check this, but I think it's categorized as merchandise. And so that can't be like 20% of your overall income.
Okay.
So, there's just like some little, it's like a little more kind of under the hood.
And you're definitely not a legal scholar here. You're just mostly someone that knows more than me about this.
But it's to say that we also, I think, are trying not to get to that point where we're having shows based on sales. That we like are building a community, and that's been the rewarding thing about doing this is that like it's seeing a community grow out of it that is more about people coming together and over art, right? And rather than like buyers or but at the same time, it's not that I don't want buyers. I think that's really part of the ecosystem, is that we need people that are coming to like support the artists, and that's not an illusion, but really it's just that I think we can show work that is challenging to the status quo that maybe David's Werner or Hauser and Wirth can't show or something, right? Or wouldn't show. And so I think it's just, we live in such a precarious time as far as like saying what you want to say. And I think that's got to be, I think there's more people that feel a certain way than not. That's what I think. And that why are these few entities like controlling what can happen and what can't happen? And so I don't know.
No, that's interesting. What would you say the difference between your space and like a straight up museum would be? Like, and I'll use like for like example, Long Beach Museum. Because I know when I've had Paul Loya, who's the director of that, on here, and the way that he described the mission was about educating a community, right? Although I don't know, I think that like I don't know I don't remember what the criteria for for picking people in, but that being the main focus is like how I want to make an educational show. Is there other motivations behind a show at a space like yours that you would see as different than a motivation from a museum space?
I think like just the scale of ours is so different, than a larger. I think scale really matters because like it's like I'd say that the advantages of our tiny scale is that we're really person to person in a way that like a bigger institution, they'll give you different things, artists will benefit in different ways, like that credibility of an institution or just the stature of that or what that means for them. But for us, I think it's kind of that, a little bit of that, but it's also about how what we can show and who we can work with, that they don't have to be like famous. They don't have to be like a ladder climber. They don't have to be like, they can be kind of community supported. I think that's kind of the criteria in which we kind of work. We're like, does this feel like a community supported event even before it even starts? Like, is this what the conversation is? Is this like feeling like, okay, this is like something that the community really wants?
Do you guys depend on memberships? Like, can I ask you about funding, how that works? Because I know that's one of the things that's specific about 501c.
Absolutely.
And then I also know there's a collective I used to be a part of that is now Voldemort, who shall not be named because we left on bad terms. But I know that they were part of Fulcrum Arts, or they were sub qualifying as a nonprofit through someone else's 501c. And for the people that don't know why I'm saying that number, that's the number of the like document, right? Or what is 501c?
Oh yeah, it's just the classification for, it's the legal category classification for your entity.
Okay.
It's like a non-governmental organization.
Oh, so you're an NGO?
Yes, we all are technically, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because we're not in the government, but we're like independent.
Yeah. So, sorry, I forgot the question I just asked you.
Yeah, I think you were.
Funding.
Oh, funding. Yeah. Yes. So what we inherited, I will say, was like, we weren't getting it, where we were not locked into any grants.
Okay.
There was just like one family foundation grant. It was like an annual fundraiser, which also started like, she kind of slowed that down quite a bit. So, and like finances were very precarious. Just, I think the whole time I was there was no plan, in terms of that either.
That location can't be cheap. The Little Tokyo, because I mean, Sahiro just got kicked out.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky because the Little Tokyo Service Center is our landlord, and they're the dream landlord.
Yeah.
Not only is it not market rate, it's like well below market rate, but they're also like really flexible. It's like they really
happens. They want the cultural institutions.
That's their priority. Yeah, and they'll work with us in ways that we couldn't dream of that. So our rent is thankfully like, it's below market rate. It's like $3,000, which is for that space. I think like 1,800 square feet.
And it's like a fancy looking building too. It's got columns and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
It's like this old church building. Yeah. And it has so much history. Like, it's been through a lot. It's seen a lot in that, as well as like the neighborhood. But so when Lydia passed, it was just there was at least 10 years of this thing like of funders aging out, of just a lot of infrastructure, right? So it was a huge like kind of experiment in a way. The board just said like, you are sort of the person that knows this place, and you knew Lydia for 13 years and you just have the memory, but we have we have so little resources, so you're just gonna have to like, you will give you the keys and like, but like we don't know if it'll yeah. So that kind of began my whole like.
And then you did a dance off boogaloo. What's it called? Breaking two boogaloo style. You saved the community center.
Oh man, I mean, just to really, I mean, with that situation, I inherited no training.
Oh yeah.
I had a vision.
Yeah.
Like I really wanted to open it up and make it community oriented, make it kind of interdisciplinary as far as like who could really come through, which we did. But I didn't really understand yet how to like conceive of like strategically building an organization. That came like, I mean, we got lucky with like, I started really grant writing too. And so this was just like around the time we started getting also like COVID recovery. Mm-hmm. So that also gave me a chance to like and like when COVID happened, that was like 8 months after Lydia passed.
No.
So that almost like, it almost like was this like kind of license from the universe to like put the madness of what was happening, like 2 shows a month. Mm-hmm. Turnover 3 days, turnover between shows. So like we're hanging 2 shows in 3 days.
Wow.
Going reception, back-to-back receptions in the same day, doing that a month and then repeating that. And then just ad nauseum, like through time, like decades. She just continuous, no Christmas breaks, no like Thanksgiving breaks, just like.
That's an insane amount of shows.
Yeah.
That's 104 if you don't take any.
That was, yeah, I mean.
Wait, no, that's weeks. 2 shows a month, so that would be 24.
Yeah. And that was going since 98 or 93 or something like that. Or 98, I think. So, yeah. I mean, it's just that there's almost, I don't know, I want to say like we did our exhibit archive. That was one project that I think we were like, there was no records. Like, there's nothing like, there was no looking back. It was just going forward. And so, so yeah, I mean, we really started I had to really start from scratch and self-train in a sense too. I feel like I wanted to say something else about just what was going on, but
you were talking about writing grants and stuff and funding.
Yeah. So I was just getting a hang on grant writing. I mean, it was so difficult. We got rejected a lot, but we got just enough to kind of scoot by, and we did that. We ended up, I had I have this friend, Sarika, who, she was telling me about Lava, and Lava's the Lava Coalition. And so that was starting around the pandemic. And this is like 2 years later is when she got kind of advocated for Artcore and kind of got us into this coalition. That was like a fundraising coalition. So that was just, the structure was just like fundraising coalition equal cash disbursements to the organizations. And I mean, that was like a huge bump, in also giving us time to like develop like the skill set and knowledge of like how do we run this thing? We know what we like want to do, but so and last year it seemed to kind of click for me. It was my 4th year, and I just started to understand like how to successfully get like a donor campaign. We kind of doubled our grassroots funding, we got a couple more grants. I mean, I kind of got the board, who we had also inherited to like understand new roles of like what it means to be on a board, like that you're really kind of champion the organization. It's not that you're just like paying your dues and calling it a day and letting the director like be the figurehead or something. Like it's so
you're part of the community.
Yeah, it's so horizontal like in that way. And so that, I started to really understand these things and really sink into those things, and kind of was like, but I was just run ragged by the end of the year, which I always am at the end of the year. And I always think that it's like, I'm so existential, and I'm just like, I have to reevaluate what I'm doing. And I just don't know if like I'm the person for this.
But every year you have a slightly better year.
And then I come back in January, and then I just go, wait a minute. Like I grew and I know so much more, and this year's going to be easier. But then I realize each year is presenting these different just curveballs. And so like catching up to all that, I mean, I think it's ultimately like a really good thing, but that's just to say that the real like skill set of like, if you're ever going to start a nonprofit, is that you really like the real hard skill set is like, getting over a fear of asking for money. It was like a huge one. That was a big one. And obviously getting used to writing grants, but also being a little like strategic in terms of where you're going and being able to communicate that, which I think anyone, who is really starting a nonprofit does it from like the heart for real. And so they know they're like everyone's so articulate and clear most all the time. But and then it's also kind of, it's like diversifying sources of income. So it's also learning how to like really just like reach out to research of like a family foundation or a foundation, and like reaching out and saying, and having that conversation, like how can we be a part of what you're doing, and how can you be a part of what we're doing? So those
are hard skills.
Kind of, I mean that's
I still
like,
struggle
it's
with
very abstract too, because you just don't know who you're talking to, and how that language of being in a court, like in a boardroom, in a buttoned up boardroom, that is how these things start to feel. But I think if you feel purposeful about the work, which, everybody I think does, then you sort of don't have to like be a salesman. You just you're like, you don't feel that way. You feel more like you're just kind of like showing, like talking about the work, and it's great. Cause I mean, it's like most people who are in nonprofits, like they're seeing like what that difference that's making on the ground. They're on the ground. They're seeing like who, like the new audience that came to the show, that never came through the space, that got to see it, got to be like, wow, like this is like the power of art. This is like who we know who had the show. They get to celebrate like their friend. It's the artist who may have not been able to realize a project like that before, or the partnering organization that you now have this like ally with. So I think
you feel less alone.
There's like over time you start to really sort of get into the community that you're trying to build. And that's the thing where it's like, oh, last year just kind of felt like I was like, I feel like I'm trust falling and I'm getting caught in a way.
That's nice. Yeah. That's a good feeling.
Yeah.
It's also strange, right? You're not used to that in life.
No. And that's it. It's like, that was
I recently had
never had that.
I recently had that experience for the first time with Dakota putting on a show for me at Orange Coast College. And I was like, oh my God, it's so crazy, but that is the community element of these things, where it's like people do kind of believe in the sincerity. And like with sales, I always found it funny. Like I always find it funny because if you're a good salesperson, I've been in my life, like you're not selling something to somebody that they don't need. You ask a lot of questions to figure out what their needs are. Right. And then you tell them what you're excited about showing them, like for example, what kind of music do you want to play, and then you tap into that excitement. But if they're not going to get into it, like it really sucks to sell somebody something, So, but I think that in the art space, people are already into the product, so if the vision is solid, it can be an easy sell. So definitely.
I think that's with any product that you believe in.
Well, especially when the end goal is to create community. People want communities. And it's also funny that it's in a church, because that's also old type of community that used to be a lot more related to art. And
yeah, it was built in 1922, and like and churches back then were functioned as like also like schools, and I mean that was like it had like multiple activities. There was a gym.
Yeah.
There was kids' classrooms. There was like it was meeting space. It was like all these different things. So,
how often do you guys switch the shows now? Is it still 2 shows a month?
No. So so COVID actually allowed me to put that to sleep, because I'll tell you why, is because while that model can, work, I don't think it's a sustainable one to have that many shows, because you're not putting like you're not really like at that rate. If you don't have the capacity to search, and really what it means is that each show should be like special.
Yeah.
And I think what my experience was prior to like the program now, just like Lydia's program, was like that artists would really get like overlooked, or like there was no time to like promote the show. There's no plan to like properly like engage or think about.
One of the unfortunate things is how much that I've learned doing this show is how much promotion matters. Because if you don't tell people it's there, they don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Like, they're not gonna like just be like, oh, the show comes out every week.
Correct.
Like it's literally crazy. Like no one's everybody's too busy to be like, well, LA Artcore has a show every third Thursday and I'm just going to keep track of that. Like you literally, that is one of the things that I hate the most about doing this stuff.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, that's a trade-off too, because like if you had some like catchy thing like third Thursdays, that's like potentially smart. But yeah, we're so irregular in the sense that when I look at a project proposal or something that comes in, I really think about like, what is this project? How much time does it need?
How do you guys field proposals? Are people allowed to just submit them open? Is there like an open call? Is there specific parameters?
Right now, I mean, we don't have like the capacity to do like a juried open call or something like that. Mm-hmm. But we do take proposals that we feel like, and we'll look at proposals, but we, at the very least, we'll do a studio visits. Mm-hmm. Like we're like all about just getting into the studios and really, just looking at the work and just being with the artist, with where they're at. And do
you do solo shows? Or is it
okay. It runs the gamut. I mean, sometimes like
I've only been to one, which is that group show, but I love the space and I love the location too.
Yeah,
because you can just hit the Geffen too.
Totally. I mean, it's like
see the most expensive shit and then a small community.
Yeah, the DIY space. Yeah. I mean, I feel like the studio visits is sort of the start, and that that just like makes it just like open to anybody.
How do you people can invite you to studio visits, or so
they can just reach out. People can reach out and just be like, hey, I need a studio visit.
All right, that's awesome. I didn't even know that. I'm glad that we can hopefully provide that to you, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are ready for that.
Yeah, that's a pleasure for us. That's like what we really want, is to just make an artist feel like they got what they need to make the next body of work, or they're got like a huge bump to get like something going. Or if they're already like on something, then we're just but it's still that we're giving like our expertise, we're giving our experience with it, and just we have like we really are into critique, and not in the way that's like adversarial, but like more collaborative. And so that's like such a passion of mine, and that's a passion I think of the organization, is that we're just really into helping people like just get to where they want to go. So then, I mean, for example, I was visiting the studio of Chen for like 10 years or so, like last 10 years or something like that, and she used to live at the brewery, and then she's making these like amalgamations of like wire and stuff like that. And then, and I would just keep coming regularly, and we would just do regular, and it was just kind of a thing we did. And then one day, she'd done this thing and it was different and it felt like a different move and it felt like an opening, and then that led to like this kind of more real, like just this, like, I don't know, she got to some place of originality, and then we're really, so then this materials process show proposal came, and then we added her to that.
Oh, cool.
So it's like a fluid process of being in conversation with artists and just, and then also thinking about really thoughtful proposals, but that also, we're also thinking about the ecology of our community and just like I think the sort of politics of the community as well. And, how I think just, I want to like the kind of decolonial politics.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we need to get, we need like more sustainable solutions to like.
Well, it's still a shocker to me that
what's happening. Yeah.
That it wasn't until 2020 that Latino artists in Los Angeles were getting shows. Because in Miami, like the Cuban artists just fucking get plenty of opportunities.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. This is their city. Like literally, they were here first. So,
yeah.
Well, cool, man.
Yeah.
No, and I think that I'm definitely with you on the decolonization of stuff. It's the world is just so much more interesting, and I think there's a lot of people in our community, in the art community, that don't really have relationships with people that are of colonized lands and stuff, but they signal towards being accepting of them. But if you don't really know them, you should probably shut the fuck up. Fair enough.
Yeah, or at least learn, like,
or make friends.
Yeah,
make friends.
Yeah, exactly. Be in the like, go show up to the spaces that are things are happening, or work work with those people. Right, exactly.
Because they're amazing people, and they have such a different worldview than you, and it's one that I'm a lot more comfortable with, and it is so much broader. It's so unnarrow. Yeah.
I mean, that's
like the spectrum of life experience when you get outside of Americanized spaces that are completely homogenized. It's really like the human experience is beautiful, and it's really nice.
Yeah. Maybe that's why it's not like this weird pressure for branding.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to like play by the rules of capitalistic.
Oh yeah. I mean,
and that's a thin thing. I mean,
yeah. I try.
Right?
I think that this podcast would be a lot bigger if I didn't talk all the shit I do online. But I also don't want to like make a community.
I don't think so. I feel like.
What?
Do you really think that?
Do that the things that I say are that inflammatory?
That they're like keeping you from a level.
I think that there are people that get turned off and don't listen. That's what I mean. Like I think that there's a lot of people that have a very specific politics, and then they'll see you stray from that, and then they'll get like, I've literally had people ask me to take down episodes because I was like supporting Palestine. But to me, that's not that crazy. But and that is the disconnect between me and that space. Our community is a very strange one, man.
Oh my God, that's wild. It really is. I mean, this whole situation.
I had someone, I'm not going to say who it was. This episode is still up, so you can't go around and fishing around. But I had someone literally a year after the episode came out, like tell me they wanted me to take it down, but wasn't being like really shady. And then they confronted me in public. And I'm like,
wow.
and I'm like, and I don't know if that tells you what kind of cultural background this person's from, but the entitlement.
It's the entitlement.
Yeah.
It's definitely the entitlement, and it's violent.
Yeah, it's violent, and it's like, I don't want to be associated with you because you're not, completely conforming to my worldview. And I'm like, yeah. But the whole point of the show
we're allowed to say what is wrong.
And the whole point of the show is that I have people on here all the time that don't agree with me. Like, like if I platform people that I don't think that I don't agree with everything on politics, but I still see a value to them, like I would at least appreciate the same, you know. And if I'm like,
at least to be open-minded.
Yeah, exactly.
And to be like, maybe I need to like not be on my righteous.
And in that sense, that's what I mean by like, I think that like, because I'm in the art niche, talking so much about politics that make people upset, instead of just being a happy art show where we're just like, the art community, or we're ironically lambasting the art community and it's like aesthetic and it, you know, like kind of like the Jerry Gagosian account, you know, like with that kind of sense of irony. I think that that's the aesthetic that I just can't muster, you know. And like, why should I? It's
you mean
my
like
show.
the snarkiness?
Yeah, I think I think that is the kind of pushback that is cool about the art world. But once you start talking about how like it you know, it spends so much of its time talking about decolonization, but the biggest colonial project is happening currently, and all the spaces are silent, and people are losing. You know, I think that is sort of the thing that makes people uncomfortable.
You know, and I think that's really something, is that just like how I think the uneasiness is like how like with this overlaps, like how arts, which is like ancient, cultural, primitive even, like becomes privilege, and how that overlaps with this whole thing. It's just, and then like where privilege becomes violent and where it becomes not, you know, like it's like where it becomes like, okay, this is exclusive. Yeah. And so that, and there's like this tension.
Yeah, and that's not to say, and you know, like, because I've been using the parallel of a commercial space like Tyler Park. That's not to vilify people in the art community, any of that. I am strictly speaking about how my aesthetics don't fit in. I don't resent people, you know, like not everybody's got to talk about, you know, like I'd rather you shut up than talk about shit you don't know about. Yeah. Yeah. You know? Yeah, no, totally. You know, so not everybody's silence on Gaza is a condemnation. I've seen a lot of people posting about that, you know, like if you run a business, run it however you see fit. Right. And I'm literally talking about how the way I've run this business is probably not the best for the growth, but it is, I think long term, this growth will be slow, but I won't be canceled for like people finding out that I'm not like that hot on Israel, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting. I guess that was also maybe the advantage of, starting from scratch and starting your own thing. And just that you can decide what
I can and can't tolerate, you know.
Who's your community, I suppose. And
I would say that first and foremost, my community out here are the Latinos. Yeah. And I'm appalled by how people treat them. Yeah. Because I come from a place where Latinos are fucking kings and we're treated as such. We run the whole city. And to me, it is like appalling. It really is like that. And so that's kind of where my frustration with this community out here. I'll tell my mom about it. Yeah. I'll tell my mom about it. And I'm definitely not doing that thing that comedians do where it's like, oh, cancel culture. I'm like, no, I'm actively turning people off because I don't like them for their beliefs, you know? Yeah. So, but I think that if I was like doing a broader show, a different kind of show, I would think that there is a way that this show could be done where if I could temper my political rage, I would have a broader appeal.
You know, I feel like it's one way or the other, because like I really love like just unfiltered critique.
Yeah, and sincerity is more my realm.
Yeah, and then I guess that has an audience. Yeah, and I'd like to think that it's a growing audience.
I think I'm doing fine. I just wish I was making money right now from the podcast, and that's my problem.
I want you to make more money too.
Well, we will plug the Patreon at the end, and we'll see what happens. But no, this was a pleasure, man. We're going on an hour and a half, so obviously I enjoy talking to you, and I really appreciate your insights. And I think that, you know, my goal here is to get the full spectrum of the art world, and I don't think that your existence is not adversarial to the commercial world, nor is the opposite true. So I really like that there is a space where someone's doing what you're doing. I really like this space. I saw who you were showing and immediately was like, okay, these are all my friends, Christopher and Anthony Velasco, yeah. And Dakota and all those people, like all of those are my friends, and they're all like, to a fault, they're all very sincere people, you know.
It's nice to have just chill sincerity, and great, just good vibes, honestly. And people that are understanding of your grief. You know, I think to some degree, we're all grieving our deaths as we live, and we're all grieving a whole bunch of other hosts of things and injustices and stuff, and people that hold space for that are amazing. So, wow. Yeah, absolutely. That's right.
Anything that I haven't asked you, that it's okay if you just say, no, we're good, we covered everything, but anything that you did that maybe you would like to get out before the recording stops?
I feel like we're
good.
I liked our conversation.
No worries.
I'm pretty good on
And then what can we promote for you? LA Artcore, obviously, is at LA Artcore.
LA Artcore. Yeah.
And
check
then
our socials.
Do you want to share your personal Instagram, or is that not as public?
Yeah, no. I'm P_Rain, RANE. But yeah.
P_, and then anything else? What's any upcoming shows for LA Artcore?
We're opening, I don't know when this kind of publishes, but we're opening, we have just like an awesome roster. I would say like I'm like really excited about this next 4 shows solid. Philippine Diaspora show, that's like a collective of artists that we're like, we need to kind of get a sense of our history through contemporary art and get a sense of our presence and visibility. So they're Naman, they created this collective called Naman, and so they're doing like their self-titled show opening on March 15th. And then Labkand Olfat Manish is this other really great artist who's doing, who's also dealing with grief. And that's like going to be a really beautiful installation that just is going to be kind of have a grounding kind of feel and impact. And then Yuchi Ma's after that. And that's Pandas Are Pandas. And so she's, that's her research is pandas. And, as I think kind of a symbolic of like, Chinese United States relations. And then we take a break in July, and then Chiho Harazaki is coming through in August. This group from Tokyo, like 10 artists from Tokyo are coming. We used to do these exchanges, and that's a lasting, exchange with Tokyo artists. And then
Tokyo artists in Little Tokyo.
We're doing like a tech. Pretty good. Yeah,
it's
just, it was just all like, I'm pretty... Yeah, it's really, really neat.
Well, cool, man. Well, this has been awesome. And as I promised, I'm going to promote my Patreon right now. But, if you guys enjoyed the conversation, like and subscribe. Comment anywhere. There's a comment box that you have anything to say about the show. And, we like and subscribe. 5 stars on everywhere. And... if you like early access episodes, we are at patreon.com/what's my thesis is the place to go. It's $5 a month. It really does help us not work at a deficit, because I'm trying to close that gap. So thank you guys. We'll be back next week with another guest and another topic that may or may not be art related.